The year 1950 was an important year for many. Some may recognize it as the start of the devastating Korean War. Some may know it as the start of the civil rights movement. But for some, they might be reminded of the time where, in the midst of a nuclear war, a rescue plane was headed out to evacuate citizens, but during its flight, it crash-landed onto an island in the middle of nowhere. Not much is known about where this plane was going or the location where it landed, but what we do know is that it killed a great amount of people. Fortunately, a couple survived. A group of young boys were stranded on a deserted island. Lost, with no adult supervision, they faced the daunting challenge of survival in an unfamiliar and hostile environment. With fear growing large and the bonds of civilization unraveling, the boys had to navigate the treacherous waters of power struggles, primal instincts, and the dark depths of human nature. As tensions rose and alliances shift, the boys were forced into a harrowing struggle for dominance and survival, where the line between civilization and savagery blurs, ultimately leading to a descent into chaos and tragedy.
How did you initially feel when you found yourself stranded on the island?
As a kid, I didn't really understand the severity of the situation. I was not really panicked or worried. Back then, I lived in the moment. I was actually pretty excited at first. No adults, no supervision. That was what a 12-year-old boy really wanted. I remember being so excited to swim in this big crystal blue lagoon. I didn't have a care in the world.
I was very happy, to say the least. No annoying adults on my back to bother me.
I was just like every other kid on the island, ecstatic that we could all get to do what we want, you know?
And what was your initial impression of Piggy?
Honestly, I was kind of rude to the kid at first. He was just such a scared, timid guy. He became the butt of a joke on the island. I remember him freaking out at first. He was so confused, and I ended up making fun of him for having asthma. "Sucks to your ass, Mar," I think I said. I was a jerk.
Annoying.
My initial impression. Well, he was an annoying, uptight type. He was such a rule follower it made my brain hurt, but I didn't think much of him at first. Just another weakling amongst a bunch of scared kids. Although he did have a bit of a brain, he liked to annoy us with ideas. Ralph and him were always coming up with ideas to better the island. He was somewhat useful, in his own way.
Can you describe the process of electing yourself as the leader and how the boys responded to your leadership?
I wouldn't say I had many qualifications to become a leader. I was 12. There really wasn't much to it. I think they all voted me because I was the one who had the conch. And to be fair, I believe I looked much more approachable than Jack. He was one bossy kid. I didn't even really elect myself. One kid told me I should be leader, and that was that.
Ralph did not have what it took to be chief. He was weak. He wasn't good at fighting or hunting. I was. Plus, he was way too focused on rescuing rather than hunting. Our main goal should have been hunting for food, not running around aimlessly for idiot kids who got lost. Ralph and I had our ups and downs, but ultimately he was not suited to lead anyone. He was a coward, thus he could not effectively protect the group.
The older kids could tell that Ralph was probably best suited for the role of chief. He was good at making decisions, and for the short amount of time we knew him, we could tell that he would make the most reasonable decisions for the good of the group.
It boiled down to Jack versus Ralph. Jack seemed like a jerk, so why would we want him as leader?
Ralph was a pretty good leader. Despite the challenges and how immature we all were, Ralph stayed steadfast in his belief that we would be rescued eventually. I admired that about him. Ralph would lead by example. He would build shelters and tend to the signal fire. Looking back on it, he worked harder than anyone to keep the group safe and organized. I don't believe he was a rule freak like Piggy, but he liked order. He was honestly pretty mature for a kid. He would assign specific roles based on each of our strengths and abilities. His calm demeanor and not-too-in-your-face optimism served as a source of reassurance for everyone, especially the younger kids.
Were there moments when you felt torn between loyalty to Ralph and Jack?
Yes, definitely. We were very loyal to Ralph, but Jack was just very cruel and stubborn. Jack tied us up for Christ's sake.
I remember feeling very afraid of Jack's group later on. With every hour, they were just becoming more and more like savages.
Jack just let Roger do whatever he wanted. He didn't care about our pain. Jack just wanted power.
What initially drew you to Jack's leadership?
The dude let me do whatever I wanted. Ralph had a stick up his bum, didn't let me have any fun.
When did you first sense that Jack was challenging your authority?
Well, Jack and I always butt heads with each other. But when the twins had warned us that they saw the beast, Jack had asked if I was frightened. I believe that was when he began to construct a plan to become chief. It started off subtle with comments like that. I didn't think much of them at the time, but after that, tensions just kept rising.
Did you ever try to manage or mitigate the situation between you two?
Yes, I did actually. I made several attempts to manage our conflicts. I honestly tried to befriend him. I initially tried to include Jack in leadership by making him the leader of the hunters. I wasn't exactly fond of how adamant he was about having a higher power, but he was clearly influential and he had charisma. I tried to give Jack a sense of authority and responsibility. I hoped it would satisfy his need for power, but it didn't. I often acknowledged Jack's skills and contributions, particularly his abilities as a hunter. I wanted to validate his importance within the group.
What led to your decision to form your own tribe?
I was tired of Ralph's rule, basically. Look, I was against Ralph as chief from the beginning. I prefer a more authoritarian style of leadership. I think that valuing strict control and obedience is key for a successful authority figure. Sure, valuing safety and being understanding is great and all, but you're not going to get anywhere if people don't listen to you. Especially when you're working with a lot of young kids, no one will listen to you if you don't show that you're the top dog. There's nothing wrong with a little fear factor in order to ensure the group goes smoothly. Ralph was very wishy-washy about hunting. Hunting is a vital part in survival, yet it wasn't his main focus. How can I respect someone who clearly doesn't realize the most important way of keeping your own tribe healthy and happy? Of course I'm happy about the rescue, but he was way too focused on getting rescued. I wanted my own tribe so we could focus on what was really important. I was sick of Ralph's passive way of leading.
I think that Jack was incredibly insecure. Jack's need to assert dominance came from his deep-rooted insecurity. Ralph's calm, rational demeanor and emphasis on civilization put Jack's own insecurities about his savage ways and impulsive nature into the limelight in his own mind.
Ralph gained respect from the other boys when he was elected leader. That was a source of jealousy for Jack. I believe that he felt that his own abilities and leadership qualities were not being recognized or valued, and for good reason. He turned out to be a complete and utter psychopath when it came to leadership.
Every time that Ralph successfully led or made decisions that were respected by the others, Jack's sense of authority was undermined, which fueled his resentment and need to overthrow Ralph.
How did or do you justify your actions to the other boys?
I'm not perfect. I was a kid. I was just trying to do what I thought was best.
How did your actions and behavior change after joining Jack?
Jack allowed me to be as violent as I wanted to. I could be as angry as I wanted to be. So you could say I got a little more dangerous.
How did you rationalize the use of violence to maintain control?
Well, when you put it like that, you make me sound like some evil villain. The thing is, I was a kid. I wasn't thinking clearly. All of us were driven to do bad things on the island. We were all young. I guess I just didn't think about the rationality of it. I just did what felt right in the moment, you know? And at the time, I felt like I had no other option. People stopped listening to Ralph because he wasn't one for strong discipline. I learned from his mistakes, I guess.
Jack was incredibly manipulative. It didn't matter if we were kids. Most of us knew that torturing people wasn't justifiable until Jack tried to normalize it to the younger boys. It was terrifying how much control he was able to gain.
How did you react to the increasing violence and savagery?
I was horrified. At first, I was strong with my belief that maintaining the signal fire was crucial for rescue. I constantly emphasized its importance, even as the other boys became more interested in hunting and playing. As Jack's influence grew, I became frustrated with my inability to maintain order. The boys' gradual shift towards Jack's leadership left me feeling isolated. That was when Piggy and I's friendship really grew closer. He became my best friend in a really short amount of time. We depended on each other. I relied on him for support, especially when Jack's violence grew worse. And then, that criminal killed Piggy. That really drove me over the edge. It shattered my humanity and belief in goodness. I still struggle with coping with Piggy's death. I never even learned his real name. After Piggy's death and the complete takeover that Jack's tribe achieved, I was forced to flee and hide. I became a hunted outcast. I could only rely on my survival instincts to avoid capture. It was probably one of the most traumatic experiences of my life.
What was your reaction to the deaths of Simon and Piggy?
Well, I was very upset about their deaths. I didn't really think it through that well. There was a lot going on. It's just, as I got older, I realized that maybe I didn't handle the situation perfectly.
Jack had no remorse for the deaths of Simon or Piggy. He didn't care. I would argue that he was actually happy about their deaths. He was happy that Ralph didn't have a tribe anymore now that Piggy was gone. Jack didn't like Piggy at all, and he wasn't that fond of Simon either. He refused to believe that he killed Simon up until the very end. I still think that he doesn't care even to this day.
How do you feel about your role in the events that unfolded?
I feel pretty good about them.
Describe your experience when you were captured by Jack's tribe.
When Jack captured us, it was really terrifying. At that point, Jack had just gotten more and more sadistic. We were physically tortured by Roger and several others. It was hell, literal hell on Earth.
I still have scars from it.
I honestly don't want to get into the gory details, but to this day I still don't understand both Roger's and Jack's twisted mind. I believe that they are pure evil.
Ever since those days on the island, I genuinely haven't been the same. I'm in therapy, I'm on medications, but nothing will ever erase the trauma I experienced. I learned a lot from that. I learned how genuinely terrible people can be. I can't say I'm grateful for the events that transpired, but I'm grateful for the fact I met Piggy. I cherish the memories of him, and I genuinely hope he happily passed on. If I could change anything, I would change everything. I would try to reason with Jack. I try to find humanity in Roger. I would save Simon and Piggy. In a heartbeat, I would try to erase the cruelties that transpired. But I've had to come to terms with the fact that it won't happen. I have to live with what happened. I have to live with the fact that there is genuine cruelty in the world.
Me and Eric love each other. We're brothers. But I can't say our relationship has been the same since the island.
We went through such terrible atrocities, and we committed a lot of terrible atrocities as well. And honestly, I have never been able to truly get over it.
Do I regret any of my actions? Well, of course I do. I didn't genuinely want Piggy or Simon to die, but I did what I needed to do to survive. Some of my actions were drastic, sure, but people failed to realize that I was a kid. I didn't know what I was doing. A lot of people like to paint me out as this really bad guy, when in reality I was just young and stupid. And besides, my actions and experiences taught me a lot about how the real world works. The real world is cutthroat, and whoever will do anything it takes to survive will always come out on top.
Yes, my experiences have changed the way I view violence and authority. My time on the island let me embrace who I truly was, and it forever changed me. Looking back, I wouldn't have changed a thing.